just add us to the list of many businesses trying to make the adjustments they need to remain relevant. And for us, what's most important is to be of use.
You're listening to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast. Here's your host, Stu Swineford.
Hey everybody, Stu here. Another great episode of Relish This on the way. My guest this week was Ryan O'Donoghue, and he is the CEO of First Descents and Stoke Broker, and they do some amazing stuff in the outdoor space, really trying to help survivors of life-threatening illnesses kind of get this passion and this drive and get these experiences that can only be found outdoors. They've been around for 20 years, have a really great established organization. Stoke Broker is their new or for-profit organization that funds or fuels some of the things that First Descents does. But our conversation was really interesting and really fun. I think the two big takeaways for me were really believing in the passion of the mission and tapping into that passion as you're developing your nonprofit, and then looking for ways to partner with other nonprofits where instead of creating duplication in the space, figure out how you can create collaboration. Collaboration is part of the First Descents ethos, and I think you'll hear that come out in the show. I had a great time. I hope you really enjoy it. Here we go. Ryan O'Donoghue, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Stu.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's really cool to have you on. You're doing some great work there at First Descents, and would love to hear all about it.
Well, I appreciate that. We are incredibly passionate about our work and excited to have a platform to share with any new audiences out there who are new to our work.
Well, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are up to this year. It's a new year. This is going to air in March or April, but definitely, so we'll have a few months under our belts at that point. But as we're recording this, it's January. So how are things going there for you guys?
Things are good, but before we get started, can I ask you a question, Stu?
Absolutely.
So I went back and I listened to the podcast that inspired the start of your podcast, and I have a question that pertains to that. Am I part of your top 10 nonprofit leaders that you wanted to interview?
Are you? Yeah, you are actually. I have a laundry list of people that I'd like to interview, and it ranges from people who are just getting started. So I've talked to a lot of people who are just starting out, and then obviously there are some people who I would say are doing a great job of really crushing it in this nonprofit space, and I would definitely put you among that elite group. You guys have been doing this for quite some time, and it's exciting to have you on the show to talk about it.
Well, it's an incredible honor, and I was kind of joking there, but I have listened to a handful of your podcasts, and I love them. You have some really incredible guests on there and lots of learnings, and I like to continue to learn from other leaders doing great work. So I appreciate everything you're doing with the podcast. In terms of First Descents, we're excited to enter a new year. Obviously, we're facing a lot of the similar challenges to what we faced in 2020. I think the one big differentiator is that we're, I think, entering a year knowing what our obstacles are and many of the challenges that we're up against. It almost feels like, entering the second half of a game where you're a little bit more knowledgeable about your opponent and your strategy, but you still kind of have to get back on the field, and still a lot of hard work to be done ahead of us. This year we're really excited to get back to more core programming, which is really outdoor adventure programming, historically for young adults impacted by cancer. And we introduced other serious health conditions in recent years, including multiple sclerosis. But we also, in the time of COVID, weren't able to serve those populations. And we pivoted to serve healthcare workers. So we will continue serving healthcare workers who are on the front lines of COVID, and expect that in the early part of the year, our programs will be focused on that population for a number of reasons. Obviously, they're at the top of the list when it comes to vaccinations. They also obviously have done a really great job. Kind of one, they need the support, but they also kind of know largely how to keep themselves safe in an environment where COVID is prevalent. So we've done a lot of work to really adjust our program control measures to make sure that we can host really safe and healthy programs for everybody. And we'll host anywhere between 30 and 40 multi-day programs throughout the country. We'll focus in on a couple key regions that have the highest demand based on the inquiries that we've received through our process. And really excited. There'll be climbing programs, paddling programs, hiking, and we have a really great yoga and mindfulness component that we weave into these programs as well, particularly for the Hero Recharge programs. One of the things that we've learned in conversations with our friends within the healthcare community is that oftentimes healthcare workers, they're really incredible at taking care of others, but self-care can sometimes land on the back burner for them. So really just leaning in and supporting those folks who are doing so much to support really the broader community during this unprecedented time.
Yeah, I remember last year when you guys announced that you were pivoting a little bit to include healthcare workers as a primary kind of recipient or beneficiary of your services. I just thought that was such a wonderful idea. And I mean, as you've illustrated, it's really well thought through as well, just based upon safety protocols and everything else. And I have a few friends who are in healthcare. One who's a respiratory therapist, so he's right on the front lines of all of this stuff. And yeah, those guys have all been hit really hard by by the psychological as well as the physical component of trying to take care of people 24/7 essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, the biggest asset have of anybody listening is if people who can benefit from our programs, please send them our way. And right now that does include young adults impacted by cancer, primarily people in their 20s and 30s, similar with multiple sclerosis, and then obviously this new healthcare worker population. So your friend would be a great candidate. Would love to get them out there. And we've had a number of respiratory therapists out at our programs. And that is obviously a group it's hard at work throughout this whole pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. He actually used to be a river guide as well. So I'm sure he would have a blast as part of that program.
Even better, because in the long run, we always need really great medical volunteers on our program. So anytime we can get people out to our program, either as a participant or a medical volunteer, that's always a great way to plug in.
Yeah, I'll mention it to him for sure. So what's been one of the biggest challenges you guys have been facing? Is it, I mean, aside from the safety protocol pieces, are there any other components in terms of getting in touch with people, or is it just an education piece at this point for you? That's the biggest challenge?
Well, I think there are a number of challenges. I think one of them is just trying to gauge people's level of comfort with engaging on experiences like this. That's obviously one. Another one for us is it's really revamping our program design. Historically, we've partnered with lodging partners and outfitters throughout the country. And, oftentimes we're bunking up in a room where there's 2 beds in that room. And obviously that's kind of a no-go in the current environment. Right. So we've really have to move into a model where we have single occupancy rooms, and then we're doing all the other, program control measures that have been largely informed by an infectious disease specialist who we contracted in to help really refresh our communicable disease plan, and really with a special focus on COVID. So I think for us, a lot of it's just finding, quite honestly, new partners to work with who have accommodations that can really support single occupancy rooms for our participants and our staff, and then also in areas where there's really close proximity to the great activities that we love to offer, which is rock climbing, ice climbing, whitewater kayaking, surfing, and really, quite honestly, any outdoor adventure sport you can imagine at this point. We've been around for 20 years and began primarily with week-long whitewater kayaking programs, and the organization has evolved quite a bit over the years, and now it's really anything that kind of falls into the outdoor adventure category: mountain biking, hiking, mountaineering, you name it. And it just depends on what those programs look like in what areas. But for now, we've really had to simplify and streamline our approach. And so this year, again, that will be the approach going into this year, is really taking a simplified approach to how we think about program delivery, and then really hopefully building towards a bigger ramp up in 2022 and beyond, as we know people are going to be chomping at the bits to get out and get outside and reconnect with their peers.
Yeah, I was actually talking with someone on a hike, excuse me, just the other day about tourism and how, it's obviously has been incredibly impacted by all of this, and whether or not it'll be easier to travel here coming up, or harder as people, they're so excited to get back out and kind of live that lifestyle that they've been dying to get in back to so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how things roll out. But it's really cool that you have identified some of the big challenges and are looking toward those opportunities to kind of solve those problems.
Yeah, I feel like just add us to the list of many businesses trying to make the adjustments they need to remain relevant. And for us, what's most important is to be of use. I think that was one of the things that we found with our team early on. I got to admit, there was a moment there where it felt pretty paralyzing, thinking about having to cancel hundreds of programs throughout the country and really not knowing what we could do. And one of the things we did early on is we were able to pivot our staff and focus on some of the frontline kind of COVID relief work in the local area, supporting organizations like the Action Center and Denver Delivery Network, amongst others. But then soon after, in partnership with a lot of the hospitals and providers that we work with throughout the country, who are really just supportive in referring patients to become participants of our program. In any typical year, we were in conversation with them, just hearing how much, of course, they're navigating with this. And we felt, hey, this might be an opportunity to be of use and to be of service. And the team really rallied behind that. And I think really that kept us motivated throughout the year. Because at first, I'm sure many people were experiencing this. So there's some shared universal empathy here. But we were really, quite honestly, as a leader, I was a little bit paralyzed there for a little bit, trying to figure out, how do we move forward?
Right. Well, that's interesting. Is that typically how beneficiaries get introduced to your program, is through their care facilities?
Yeah, the two top sources of a referral for us are really word of mouth, and now it's kind of becoming also learning about us online through social media and otherwise. But otherwise, it really is through a campaign that we launched a few years ago titled Prescribe Adventure. And we have over 400 hospitals and medical centers throughout the U.S. with nearly 800 providers who are signed on to be advocates of that program and sharing information about First Descents with their patients at a time that makes most sense within their healing. And so it is a really incredible source of referrals from our medical community.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wasn't quite sure what what activities you guys were employing to get in front of beneficiaries, and other than the obvious, just kind of general marketing stuff and online activities. So that's neat that you have that referral network. My guess is that's got to lead to quite a few opportunities there in terms of not only volunteer options, but donor base as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the greatest opportunity, obviously, is partnering with medical centers who are treating these the population who we serve, and able to introduce these programs at times that are good for them. And the idea of actually serving healthcare workers isn't new. It wasn't, we weren't in a place to pursue it until, quite honestly, COVID forced the hand a bit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there obviously are a lot of benefits to that network, the expertise, the medical volunteers that come out to our programs to make sure that we're fully covered and supported on site when we're hosting participants out, to support any range of needs they may have while they're with us. And to some extent, there is, an advancement play with philanthropists who are connected with some of those hospitals, who are committed to not only the research and therapy that's being administered within those settings, but also to the longer term survivorship care piece of helping people navigate their journey kind of post treatment, which obviously is becoming a much more well-known challenge these days, which is a good thing, because it definitely means more supportive resources are being brought to bear for folks who are coming out of treatment and have been given maybe a clean bill of health, or are just on ongoing therapy longer term, but not supported in a day-to-day capacity with a medical team. Oftentimes that can be a challenging time in the transition of people's care. And that's where ideally organizations like ours and other great advocacy organizations can step in to support patients throughout their healing.
Yeah, it seems like there might be kind of a gap there as you're coming off of that intensive support that's going on during treatment to, some kind of post treatment sort of event, that there might be kind of an interesting lull in one's life. Is that what you guys see?
Yeah, very often that is the case. Oftentimes people are told, you're good to go. And people, again, one, on the medical, for those providers, unfortunately, the demand is so high that they have to be, they really often have to focus on the next case that they're treating.
Mm-hmm.
And even sometimes friends and families hear, "Oh, you're cured. That's great. You're good to go." And that oftentimes that rally of support that happens while somebody's going through treatment tends to fade a little bit. And that's really where organizations like First Descents can step in. One of the beautiful things is just that peer connection. When people come out to our programs, they don't really have to explain that much what they've been through. They understand one another, and those conversations really evolve organically. And for us, we very much see our role as creating a safe space for that to happen, and also introducing incredible adventure experiences that empower people to really kind of push beyond some of those perceived limitations that they're feeling at any given time. One of the things that we hear most at our programs is, I felt like my body betrayed me, or I lost all confidence in my physical abilities. And after having gone through an experience with us where we create an environment that is really tailored to people's individual goals throughout our experience, and getting them to a place where they feel that sense of accomplishment, it's really empowering. And so that's a great example of where, quite honestly, as somebody who was, I lost my brother to cancer. I was a part of his care team throughout the process. And sometimes it's just difficult as a family member, because you can't do everything for that individual. And sometimes they do need to connect with their peer group so they can have that shared empathy. And it's not to say that families aren't wonderful, supportive, and compassionate, but sometimes we as family members can feel a bit at a loss in terms of what we can do to continue supporting people depending on what they're going through.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting that kind of the multi-tiered need that certain levels just can't fulfill. And as much as we'd like to, as caregivers, there's only so much that we can do. And then sometimes there's just a role that needs to be filled by someone else, whether that's a peer group or an organization like yours. It's really it's cool that you guys have plugged into that and are seeing the benefits of those types of engagements.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up caregivers too, and I think that's an important group as well, that's often forgotten throughout the process as their loved ones oftentimes the focus of kind of everyone within their community to provide support. And so we do a limited number of caregiver programming as well.
Okay.
And we're actually looking to grow that in time. We have a lot of incredible partners who are really eager to support the work of us, making sure that caregivers also have similar experiences to the participants we serve, who are the ones navigating that primary diagnosis.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting road that unfortunately so many of us have to travel down at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just it's cool to hear how you guys are expanding that mission a bit in terms of always looking for new opportunities to serve. I think that's great.
We're excited. Yeah, we're excited to continue to see where we can bring adventure to more and more people's lives. And I mean, we as a team and as an organization, and really as a broader community, just really believe in the healing power of adventure. And Stu, I know you a little bit. You've been with us out to Silverton, and you and I have gotten outside for walking meetings in the past, and I know how much you value that as well. And so it's not necessarily unique to us, but what we're trying to do is create those direct program experiences. And one of the other things we're excited about this year is building a little bit more of a platform to really inspire and educate people. And actually reminds me of a conversation, Stu, you and I had a while back, this idea of really helping the do-it-yourself movement and enabling people with the tools and resources they need to get out there and create and make adventure a part of their healing process, not only while they're with us at a program, but back in their communities, perhaps with other members of the First Descents community who've also had an experience with us and understand the culture and the outliving it spirit that we believe so strongly in. So that's another aspect of our work we're really excited to lean into this year, and helping people through their own adventure creation.
I think that's just great. One of the things we talk about all the time is, kind of three levels of engagement. And the first being just helping people figure out how to solve the problem. So being there as a resource in a DIY capacity is, it's a fantastic way to just help people who really just want to take the reins and go for it, to accomplish things. And so just having that attitude that you're willing to just pass on information to help people figure it out is a great first step to kind of a done with you. So there's certainly this next step, which where you're a guide in that process and helping people come up with whatever their plan might be. And so that is a potential for you guys. And then certainly the third is the done for you, where, it's more of a white glove kind of approach. And so it's cool to hear that you're kind of engaging at least in those first two, if not that middle one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it just depends on how you define each of those areas, but I think that's spot on. I think the done for you to some extent is, hey, we're going to host a multi-day adventure program. We want you to come out. Everything's going to be taken care of. We'll walk you through everything step by step. I mean, obviously, in part, that's done with you because they're coming with us, right? And they're experiencing it on their terms and based on their own personal experience. But it's largely that high touch. We like to think of our work less as kind of white glove, but definitely more high touch, and that's where we're providing those free of cost programs to people we serve. And then the done with you and the do it yourself. I think those are things again that we are definitely building out and have done historically, but really just trying to build out a framework that does that a little bit more at scale. We have the blessing of having worked in this space for over 20 years, and we have incredible partners throughout the country who are outfitters and local guides. And really the idea there is, having vetted a lot of these folks and know that they're great to work with and they understand us, they understand our community and the needs of our participants. It's really how do we plug our community into those various offerings, and then over time continuing to create that self-efficacy that allows people to really embrace adventure and other healthy lifestyle changes into their life. Nutrition's a big emphasis at our programs and just more broadly within our organization, as is yoga and mindfulness. And, obviously adventure is our core competency, and that's what we lean into most. But we believe that there are these other kind of non-medical interventions that really support healthy behavior change and overall improve quality of life.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could take that for sure.
Absolutely.
It's cool. I was thinking, you mentioned earlier about lodging.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's opportunity there right now, particularly to maybe create relationships with either hotel chains or kind of Airbnb or places like that to help expand that opportunity or that ability to house participants. Have you guys done anything to reach out to those kind of resources to tee up potential longer term partnerships?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been in discussions with a lot of different groups, really evaluating all sorts of solutions. One in particular is with the American Camping Association, and having a note go out to really all the members within that. For those who, in many cases, there have been situations where kids camps have been canceled or other things have been canceled due to this, and really trying to help, again, use some of the beautiful properties and facilities they have on offer to provide some programmings during this unique time. And that's been definitely a part of our strategy is trying to make as many of those connections as possible, and making sure that we're getting the lodging done right and with a level of affordability that a relatively modest size nonprofit can manage.
Yeah, gosh, it's just such a challenge. When you have to double your capacity all of a sudden,
right?
It just, I can completely see how that's a daunting task, particularly in some of the places that you guys go, which aren't necessarily on the beaten path all the time, right?
That's right. Yeah. We do. And again, that's another challenge too. Obviously, we're not asking people to get on planes and to travel far distances to come to our program. So we're really going to a little bit more of that regional program model, where people can ideally drive themselves to a program and figure out, safe transportation without having to get on go through the airport, get on a flight, all the things that go into that. Not suggesting I know much about the safety of air travel during all of this. I quite honestly don't, but I think that's one area that we've been advised to be careful about. So we're trying to really make the adjustments that we need to there. And sometimes that means not going to some of those the more remote destinations that we really love.
Right.
And it's a bummer. We love the partners that we have in a lot of those places as well. And that's been really a difficult thing to accept throughout all of this, quite honestly, is not being able to do this work in partnership with so many of those who are really just, really they're just an extension of our team and our community. And we heard it from a lot of our long-term partners that it was a tough year not having that opportunity to be a part of this in a direct kind of hands-on way. And I think we're facing that again this year, which is, again, tough for us to accept, but we're all making those adjustments within our businesses.
Yeah, we certainly are. I mean, we've seen, and maybe even an uptick in people's desire to give back. I think people are itching to be a part of a community, be part of a movement and something that brings a lot of good to the world. And in the last year, that's been kind of not certainly not as easily done as in years past. You can't just go out and volunteer for your favorite organization right now. A lot of the times, particularly when that organization's work is very hands-on. So there's certainly other ways that I think people can get engaged, and it's a really good time to be reaching out to all your stakeholders, I think, to see just how they might help, spread the word in the absence of being able to go out and do a lot of hands-on volunteer work.
Yeah, that's right. We are so lucky to have such a supportive community, and I will say that people have stepped up in so many different ways to support our continued, advancing our mission moving forward and looking ahead and thinking differently and planning differently. I think those are some of the silver linings in all of this is, we have identified areas of our business that we think we can adjust and make some changes longer term that will hopefully remove some of the more difficult variables that go into program planning and doing it at scale. So probably a much longer conversation for another time, but we're in the process of refreshing our strategic plan and really looking towards. This may sound far off, but we've been around 20 years. Where do we want to be 20 years from now? And then how do we break it down in bite-sized pieces from there, knowing what our vision is and where we want to be in 2040 as an example. And so we have lots of really great ideas that are percolating right now that we're using Q1 to crystallize. Usually this is the time of year where we're ramping up for our biggest annual event here in the Vail Valley, where we bring together members of really all aspects of our community, everything from our partners, our corporate partners, to our longtime donors, to our volunteers and our outfitters even come to this event. Certainly our alumni of our programs and participants. So it's the second year we won't be able to host this one up here. Last year would have been our 20th anniversary. We would have been celebrating our 20th anniversary. So we do look forward to getting back to those types of events, but absent of that this year, we're able to really lean into some of the long-term planning work that is going to really kind of illuminate the path for us longer term and create a very clear vision for our team and our community as we look to the future.
Yeah, events just got clobbered in the last year or so. I was fortunate enough to be able to squeeze in to your Silverton trip last year, which was just a blast. And that was about a month before things really kind of started to hit hard. What are the other kind of fundraising events do you have planned for this year?
Well, this year we do. Well, we're gonna reboot the First Ascents Ball. We're gonna do it in the fall, so long as everything goes well and we can pull it off, which we think we can. I think there are a bunch of the other fundraising events that hopefully will come back online this year. We have a really great partnership with Leadville 100, both the ride and the run, and we tend to have a really healthy team in those events, and that raises a really good amount of money for us each year. Other events like New York City Marathon, Hood to Coast, and a bunch of other great events that really kind of fall under this Outliving It project umbrella. And we're actually, side note here, we're expanding what the Outliving It project platform is the offerings through that with, again, this adventure creation opportunity and this platform to have members of our team who can really help people do that. Absent of having to fundraise or anything like that, just really helping people to adventure in their own communities. But in terms of fundraising events, really, it's those peer-to-peer fundraising events. It's hopefully rebooting the First Ascents Ball here in the fall of 2021. But thankfully, from a fundraising perspective, we have an incredible team that does a lot of great grant work, and we have a really supportive network of people who give, personally, philanthropists and others who just are very generous to our cause. And so we're not, while we historically have really great local events like our Brooklyn Bash event and our San Francisco Bash and some other things like that, we really just have to hit the pause button on those, because what we don't want to do is plan a bunch of things that we have to cancel again. That was quite painful last year, is having to cancel all of those really exciting events and programs, of course. And so this year we're planning around the knowns and we're trying to avoid reacting to the unknowns. And then, obviously that's always a part of any business is being able to respond to unknowns and be agile. But this year we're really trying to streamline, simplify, and then plan for ramping up in 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a reset.
That's right.
You mentioned early on that it feels like second half, which I get that feeling as well. We've all kind of been handling things for good or bad for the last almost a year now, and and have learned a lot. And I think we've all been able to, hopefully been able to grow and to really see that, we can adapt and we can make, still make great things happen in the absence of what is sort of normal. So it's great to hear that you guys have managed to do that as well, and that you're maybe hitting your stride a little bit coming out of halftime.
That's exactly right. There's another exciting initiative underway. We recently acquired a business called Stoke Broker, which was founded by our founder, Brad Ludden. And we're really excited about that. It's a cause corporation where we're able to provide really bespoke adventure opportunities for private clients, and really the profit of that all really is reinvested into the mission of First Descents. So we didn't exactly pick. Timing was interesting, right? Where the acquisition of this happened really in conjunction with our 20th anniversary, and we were really looking to kind of launch at a time where it wasn't so challenging, but nonetheless, I guess you could say it's bold to launch a for-profit adventure travel company during a global pandemic. But we have an awesome team over there too that's been really had a lot of success despite all the challenges. So we got a lot of things going on, and we got a lot of great people involved with them. So yeah, it's continuing to problem solve around this time. And I'm reminded by some of my colleagues, one in particular, that this will be our finest hour looking back on it. And it's sometimes hard to see that in the moment, but as
Yeah.
leaders, it certainly makes us more resilient. I think definitely more compassionate. I think it helps us to become better listeners and a little bit more in tune with how people are doing throughout all of this. And we've had a lot of learnings along the way, and I think it'll only make us stronger in time, as much as some of that has come with a little bit of pain along the path.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember talking with you about Stokebroker back early on. It was last year, so during kind of the onset of all of this stuff.
Yep.
We talked about that, and that's great to hear that that's still moving forward. I think that there's great opportunity there, particularly as things really start to open back up. I'm certain that people are, as soon as the fear factor gets kind of overcome in terms of how do I travel safely. I think people are going to be just raring to go on that type of adventure travel for sure.
Absolutely. I think thankfully we have 20 years of experience of helping people who are in a health compromised situation navigate travel and adventure and things of that nature. So safety is our number one priority when it comes to all things adventure. And I think one of we do have some private clients that are taking advantage of Stoke Broker currently. And I think we've had a lot of success historically hosting leadership team building retreats and employee engagement opportunities previously through First Descents, and now we're kind of routing all of that through Stoke Broker. It just it makes a little bit more sense to do it that way, and we're really excited once companies to the point you're making. Once companies feel that it's safe to bring their teams back together, and certainly people who are traveling with their families and other friends, when they're ready to do that, we'll be ready to support them in doing that. So really excited to see where this goes with Stoke Broker, and it'll be a fun road ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So in the 20 years you guys have been around and doing such great work, what are some of the obstacles that you've been able to overcome that you might be able to provide some insight for newer nonprofits who might navigate those same waters?
That's a great question. I think early on, the biggest obstacle was actually getting buy-in that it would be prudent to bring people who are coping with cancer out on the river or out on the rock or whatever the case may be. And thankfully, the vision of the founders, our founder, Brad, and the founding board, and all the volunteers who were part of First Descents back in the day, after putting on that first program here in the Vail Valley on the upper Colorado River, they just saw how powerful it was. And that was reinforced through a lot of the testimonial from the participants. They had the resilience to just, keep at it and keep working towards something that they really believed in. And obviously it's grown tremendously over time. But early on, the barrier really was around the idea of even, allowing people who were quote unquote sick to come out in an adventure with us. I think, other barriers, obviously, any nonprofit is going to face is funding. I think certainly nonprofits that are in Colorado, or in the outdoor space or working in healthcare advocacy are going to face challenges surrounding diversity and making sure that that's a priority. But really, I think, there are so many challenges when it comes to running a nonprofit. I think that I think that's a whole nother conversation, but I think so much of it is, it's just believing in what you're passionate about and knowing that, that people can benefit from what you offer. And I think, there's just such a constellation of different wonderful causes out there that, I think one of the things to be mindful of is duplication. So if you're seeing others doing great work, it's how do you partner up with them? How do you, support their work? And, I have the unique experience having founded my own nonprofit back in the day, and we've since kind of sunsetted that initiative, but it really put me on the path to, my career with Livestrong prior to joining First Descent, and eventually put me on the path to where I am now. And I think so much of it is really understanding what you're passionate about, seeing, really kind of doing a landscape analysis of who else out there believes as strongly in what you're trying to do as you do, and collaboration. I think, collaboration and creativity really win the day when it comes to this type of work.
Yeah, those are all really great examples of things that people can kind of keep in mind. I really do think that speaking to that passion is one of the first things that's super helpful. And I have a blog post kind of brewing in my head about Patagonia.
Yep.
And and they used to have the reputation, people always called it Patagucci because it was, really expensive, and I haven't heard them called that in many years. And I think it coincides with when they really leaned into their environmental mission and really just started putting it out there that this was what they were about. And once they really fully embraced that, it just dropped off in terms of that perception. And I'm wondering, and I need to do some more exploration around this, but I'm wondering if that's not part of that key. That when you believe so strongly in the thing that you're trying to accomplish and live those values and really put that out there in such an authentic, consistent way, that's how you start to really make big shifts in the way that people perceive you, as well as, the breadth of the mission that you can actually accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's right. Having that through line that everything really ties back to is so important. And to what you're saying here is speaking to your passion and I think you can't do it enough, right? I think it's a very saturated world that we live in with, the constant pings and notifications that people are getting, and everyone wants to be an Instagram influencer. I mean, that's a broad statement. Maybe that's, but I think the idea is that, I think, I don't think there's one right answer. I don't think there's one right platform, but I think just leaning into that passion and really thinking about who else shares that with you, and how do you really build coalitions around that, and how do you collaborate, and certainly seeking funding partners along the way who believe in your mission. For us, what's been very helpful as well is early on, one of our top partners said, hey, we would like to fund an externally led evidence-based research effort to really validate that what you're doing is accomplishing the intended results that you have. And so we since have done first that one, and now a subsequent evidence-based research effort that really has really validated our work in a big way. And I think it allows us to speak the language with audiences within the medical community who are the ones who are going to be referring participants out to our programs, in that our programs do improve, social connection. They reduce issues surrounding psychosocial distress, which is anxiety and depression, and other challenges surrounding body image, and you name it. Right? I think there's an important part of this work and demonstrating not only through a lot of the for us at this point, thousands of inspirational, anecdotal, testimonials and inspiring stories of how people have changed their lives as a result of being a part of our community. But also, there are those, particularly larger grant funders that are getting a tremendous number of requests every year for funding. It's really important to demonstrate the efficacy of your work. And so I think I would encourage nonprofits kind of early on to really be thinking about their intended impact, their quote unquote theory of change, and then how do you measure those things to make sure that you're learning along the way. We've learned a lot from those research efforts, and we've made a lot of adjustments to make sure that we understand our blind spots and that we're addressing those gaps. And one example of that is early on we really were focused on week-long programs, and what we learned is that while those programs are certainly transformational in many ways, that oftentimes the participants of our programs, when they went back into their home lives, they had this incredible experience, but then they weren't feeling like their home life was all that inspiring. And so there was this tendency to slip into those previously identified distress levels that they were experiencing prior to joining us at a program. And so we built, this is where we really, turned the corner and really focused on community building and how do we provide programs in local areas, bring people together, and now really leaning into how do we make sure that we're providing the tools and information that people can use to really create the lifestyle change that embraces adventure in their own day to day.
Oh, that's great. So that you're able to take this experience and enable people to apply it as an ongoing component of their lives.
Absolutely.
Correct?
I mean, really that's what's going to sustain those improvements to, the previous challenges that I mentioned, whether it be psychological distress or, issues surrounding body image or feelings of isolation or alienation. It's being able to sustain the outcomes that we achieve within our programs, and even reach people that have barriers to maybe coming out to join us for a program. Is how do we inspire that outliving it spirit within anybody who believes in the values that we share as an organization.
Nice. I really love that. How did you guys how did you approach that research piece? Because data is certainly something that we lean on quite heavily in the marketing world to try and make sure that we're measuring and doing the right things and doing more of the things that work and making adjustments and iterating, et cetera. But did you come to those kind of research projects by presenting those to your partners, or were there some people that were interested in the data opportunity that came to you to see how to leverage that? What was the kind of the genesis of all of that research?
I think it was a combination of the things you mentioned. We have a medical advisory board that is comprised of just really supportive, incredible professionals in that space, some of which are focused on research. And then again, we have funding partners who are in the biotech space who clearly understand the value of research and evidence-based findings. And so it was kind of a combination of conversations that we were having, trying to understand what are the various more standard medical scales that we could measure. That's where, we come up with a range of like PSI-4 and other measures that these researchers are using to understand the efficacy of the programs. And then really it's obviously working in collaboration with our community and those who've been out to the programs to get those to participate in the process. So I think it was a super collaborative approach with, those close to the organization. I'll also point to really the adolescent and young adult oncology movement as a big part of this as well. And really that dates back nearly 20 years at this point, when Livestrong partnered with the National Cancer Institute to create really research around a progress review group research effort around the gaps that were becoming more obvious through research and statistical analysis surrounding this population of adolescents, young adults, ages 15 to 39. And I think the one that really stood out, especially back then, is when you looked at the data, what you saw was that 5-year survival rates really hadn't improved since the early 1970s. And when
Okay.
you look at, younger populations and older, pediatric and older adults, you saw that survival rates really were improving quite substantially over that same period of time. And as these groups came together and really came up with a plan on how to address it over the years, you saw just a really beautiful collaboration amongst many organizations who had identified this gap in care. And I could talk about this for hours as well. There's just so much to that, but I think that movement has been really instrumental in helping us get connected with the right researchers who are interested in these same topics within their medical institutions and kind of beyond. And when we presented the opportunity to study what we were up to, there was a lot of eagerness to do that.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we were able to get the funding to make it happen, and a lot of the generosity from our research partners early on to make it affordable for us to do it, because research is not cheap. And so, we've had just a tremendous amount of generosity and intention around how we approach those efforts.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hear you keep coming back to collaboration, which I think is just such a key element, is, looking for people to help and looking for people that you can help, and creating those relationships and building that is kind of how we as humans get things done. So it's cool to hear you come back to that all the time. And then I think what I would say for, kind of up and coming nonprofits is to not always just rely on your gut, and really take the opportunity to ask the question, is this really benefiting people, or is this really, are we achieving the outcomes that we were hoping to, or even expecting to? And if not, what outcomes are we achieving? And just really kind of going back to data and measurement and surveying your stakeholders and trying to gather that information, because it can be something that can really springboard things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I think that's one of the things, that as many challenges that exist within the nonprofit space. I think one of the nice things is hopefully that there is a tremendous amount of collaboration, and it's not so much competition, right? When you see other people doing similar work, that it's great that they're doing it, because quite honestly, most of us can't reach all the people that we want to anyway. So I think there's such an important aspect where there's really not quote unquote competition like you might see in the for-profit space as much. And hopefully people working in the nonprofit space are thinking much less from a kind of place of self-interest, or, that cutthroat approach that you might see when it comes to, other spaces where, it's about the bottom line, it's about your shareholders, it's about your investors, and nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it. I mean, when you think about some of the things that have changed the world for better, they are, under that model of creating new innovative products that improve people's lives. And so definitely not challenging that model necessarily, but I do think that's one of the beautiful things about the nonprofit space. And I would encourage people, when they're thinking about how do I start, a lot of nonprofits, myself including the one that I founded as well, they come from a place of personal experience. And that's a beautiful thing. And one of the things that comes with that is passion and, an element of kind of tenacity and resilience to keep doing that work, even when times get really hard, and oftentimes not for any personal gain, but due to what you experienced and when wanting to just be a part of the solution. And so I would always encourage anybody early to the process to look around and think about those organizations that really do inspire you, and A, what you can learn from them, or B, maybe how can you plug in to something that already exists versus reinventing the wheel. Because I do think that funding, the funders are becoming more and more sophisticated on that as well. And I'll say that, funders they really don't love to see duplication, because, duplication in the nonprofit space doesn't exactly weed itself out like I think it may when you look at for-profits, because that is where I think competition can be healthy. It's, the best business wins. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think in the nonprofit space, it's harder sometimes to differentiate between those two things.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's certainly in the Denver Boulder area, there are tons of nonprofits, and I'm confident there's plenty of overlap. Um, and I like you, I haven't really seen a cutthroat kind of attitude around that, but certainly if we could pool our assets and try to figure out how to work kind of collectively, that the potential to do even greater things exists for sure. Yeah, that's a really great insight, actually.
Yeah, and I think and again on that point, I think I don't know. Sometimes it's hard again. A lot of times, venturing into the nonprofit world is a personal passion, and in many cases, people are doing that on top of their day-to-day job. So to expect sometimes that people have done their full market assessment and landscape analysis and all these things, I at the same time, I recognize how that's a lot to chew. That's a lot to chew on, right? But I do think it's really important. I'm not sure I have much more to say on that other than just looking at others who are doing great work and trying not to reinvent what's already out there, and really just come to the table to work together and improve on things they're working well.
Yeah, there might be opportunities to spin off a regional wing of a larger nonprofit that, if one has a real passion to run something,
right.
There might be an opportunity there as opposed to kind of reinventing the wheel and trying to carve out your own little chunk of a pie that's not necessarily getting any bigger.
Yeah, it's like the abundance philosophy, right? Like it's not about growing your size of the pie; it's kind of growing the whole pie, and it's really thinking through how do you. I think that's the spirit that. But it's tough. I mean, running nonprofits. I think I've heard this. Like this could just be bro science that I'm repeating here because I just heard it from somebody else. But nonprofits and restaurants have the highest failure rates because for a range of reasons. But for nonprofits, certainly it's. The funding is tough, and you look at books like Uncharitable, where they measure percentage of GDP, that goes into philanthropy, and really we've seen a tremendous increase in the number of nonprofits, but you don't see a tremendous increase in the amount of giving. So I think that math doesn't exactly work, right? So it's so it's just something to keep in mind. And certainly for listeners out there who are in a fortunate position to be able to give, I'd encourage you to find those nonprofits that you're most passionate about, understand the ones that are having the greatest impact, and get involved, contribute. And sometimes that can be, obviously financially, but it could also be through your expertise and your volunteerism. And there's just so much, I'll speak to our experience, right? We benefit from such a beautiful constellation of supporters, financial, whether it's financial expertise, whether it's, just guidance on any range of topics where we're not the expert. And we're just in a really fortunate position after 20 years of being at this, that we have incredible partners that help us with anything that we're not the pro at. And I think that's so important as well, as to work with great partners. And again, for your listeners out there, just I imagine you have a lot of great people who are already invested in great nonprofits, but the challenge I always throw out there is, think about the skills and the resources that you can bring to bear against your favorite causes, and challenge your thinking a little bit about that and see what you can do that maybe you're not already doing.
Well, there's certainly a lot of nonprofits out there who are looking for committee members or board members, or, some just a little help here and there. You don't always have to put a shovel in the ground to be a volunteer. You can really contribute in a wide variety of ways to help any nonprofit thrive. So, so just increasing that opportunity in your own space, I think is a wise recommendation.
Absolutely.
So how can people find you? Where's the best place for them to reach out if they want to get more information about First Descents?
The best place to learn about First Descents is at our website. It's www.firstdescents.org. And then I would also encourage people to go visit our website at Stokebroker as well, www.stokebroker.com. And that's the best way to reach us on both of those initiatives.
Oh, that's awesome. In terms of action, I really like the conversations that I have, and I really appreciate you being on the show with me today and talking with me more about your mission and all the great things you guys are doing. But if you were to have people who've listened to the show today take one action, what would that be?
Get outside. Just spend more time outside. And I think the more time we can do that, regardless of where we live, whether that's going to the local park. Certainly we're all about leveling up your adventure. So get in touch with us if you're looking to level it up a bit, but spend time outside and allow that to bring some healthy perspective, right? Like, I think thankfully this is becoming a little bit more well-known more broadly, is just the importance of spending time outside. And that would be my number one call to action for people.
Well, I am with you on that. That's one other thing that has come out of these crazy times that we're living in right now, is that for me, not having to commute to an office every day gives me a couple hours to go outside and play. So I've been really taking advantage of that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much again for being on the show, Ryan. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing. Big fan, and I'm excited to see how things evolve in your next 20 years.
Well, thank you, Stu. And I appreciate the support you've lent us over the years. You've been a really great supporter, and you've helped us with doing an audit of our websites and doing some other really valuable work. So those out there listening, whether you're a leader of a nonprofit or you're an employee of a nonprofit, I would encourage you to consider Stu in the work that they do at Relish to support your work. And I appreciate you creating this platform, Stu, to get the word out about so many great causes. Need more people like you out there in the world. Appreciate you.
Oh, I really appreciate that plug and your confidence, and look forward to spending some time outdoors with you here in the coming months when we can get back together.
As well, my friend.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep, you too.
All right, there you have it. Another great episode of Relish This. Thanks for listening. If you would like to learn more about how to apply the audience engagement cycle to expand your organization's mission, there are two things you can do. Right now, you can go to missionuncomfortablebook.com to download a copy of my book. And while you're there, you can get your purpose-driven marketing score to see where you can unearth some gold for your organization. If you'd like to listen to back episodes of the show or sign up to be a guest, go to relishstudio.com/